Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to have a look at another beer from a brewery I introduced you to a couple of videos back. So for this one we're going to return to Nara City in Nara Prefecture once again, and we're having a look at my second beer from Naramachi Craft Beer. To translate that into English, literally it is Nara Old Town Craft Beer. So this one is the Kuro Stout, which comes in at 5.5% ABV, and hopefully this is another quite nice beer. The last one that I reviewed from these guys was the Weizen, and as I've told you before, German beer has had a big influence on the little Japanese Jibiru craft breweries, the local craft breweries. There's a lot of Kulshis, a lot of alt beers, a lot of Weizens and things over here. You will find porters and stouts on occasion, but nowhere near as frequently as you will the German beers. But one of my policies when it comes to trying a new brewery is that you want to try something from the light end of the spectrum and also something from the dark end of the spectrum, and that'll give you a good idea of what a brewery is all about. So that's exactly what we're going to do with Naramachi Craft Beer. But very curious to see how this one turns out. The Weizen was a very light and crisp kind of beer, but it had a lot of nice flavour to it, I have to say. And I've told you about Japanese beer before. To the Japanese, beer has to be very drinkable, but at the same time craft beer these days has to have a lot of flavour, so I'm curious to see whether this beer is one that fits into that particular mould. So we'll just need to see, but looking forward to reviewing my second beer from Naramachi Craft Beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it as well. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Naramachi Craft Beer before. Hopefully I can add some more in the near future beyond this one. This will be the last one for a little while. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Japanese beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, or basically whenever I have the opportunity. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Naramachi Craft Beer. So as I've told you already, Naramachi Craft Beer is based in the Old Town area of Nara, and it was opened back in March of 2017, so it's still a relatively new brewery. The main man behind this brewery is Masayoshi Aoyama, who's originally from Tenri City, and he had trained as a brewer for 2 years at Kibido Brewery in Okayama, which is a bit further south of the Kansai region, down closer towards Hiroshima. But he basically decided that he wanted to bring craft beer to Nara to kind of mix it in with the sake heritage that the city boasts. A lot of people will say that Japanese sake was born in Nara. There's a lot of very old sake breweries in Nara Prefecture, of course, that I do recommend that you check out. Oddly enough, the reason I found out about this brewery was because I was in Harushika Shuzo, which is just round the corner. I told them about my YouTube channel and they said, oh, there's a craft beer brewery just a street that way, so go and check it out. And that was how I went to the bar and actually got a hold of these beers. But these guys are a very kind of small scale operation. They've got, I think it's either a 250 or a 500 litre brew kit on site. It's lovely and copper cladded and things like that. It looks very nice. But this supplies the restaurant, which is called Mugia, and they serve Italian style food made with local Nara ingredients. As of January 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, according to Untappd, these guys have produced around 20 different types of beers, but there's only 3 available in the bottle. That's the Weizen, which is the white label one. They've got a pale ale, which is in the red label bottle, and then they've got this one, the stout, which is the black label, obviously. But if you check out the Untappd listings, they've got there's double IPAs in there, imperial stouts, and a few other different styles as well, and you can only get these on tap in the bar from what I gather. So yeah, it's definitely worth going and checking it out and having a little look. Hopefully the next time I'm in Nara I can actually go and have a look at some more of their beers and things and taste those. That would definitely be a really nice thing to do. So yeah, you might see a little out and about video from Naramachi craft beer at some point in the fairly near future. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Naramachi craft beer for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook. I think the Instagram is where they're more active though, and you can check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages to get information on all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer then. So as you can see with this one, the artwork on this is very similar actually to what we had with the Weizen before. You can see there's little deer and things outlined on this, and if you go to Nara you'll see the deer just wandering around in the park, and it's because they were the gods of one of the old Shinto sects or something like that, if I remember correctly. There's a lot of Buddhist and Shinto religion around the Nara region. Nara, incidentally, was the ancient capital of Japan from around the 700s. I think it was the first capital that they ever had, but really nicely presented. This sort of symbol here, the kind of hop cone sort of type thing, that is the main symbol of Naramachi craft beer. And interestingly as well, Michiko was telling me that the kanji on this bottle is actually gen, so she wasn't sure why it was saying Kuro, but Kuro just means black. So basically this is the Naramachi black beer, and it's a stout obviously, which kind of makes sense. So yeah, this one comes in at 5.5% ABV. Like I said with the Weizen, normally a sort of English stout, they can be between like 4.5% and they can go up a little bit higher than that. So this one, it's a little bit stronger than you might find from a typical English real ale, but it's definitely within the realms of possibility. There you can see the Naramachi bottle cap on this one. But yeah, a nicely presented beer, this one. So without further ado, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. A 5.5% stout. And we'll need to talk about exactly what kind of stout this one turns out to be. So let's get it out and into the glass. A little bit of smoke on the opening there. So yeah, this one kind of looks exactly as you would expect. So, with this beer then, if we hold it up to the light, bring it forward to my nice LED light here, it's actually very, very dark, this one. I think you would struggle to find a stout that is quite as pitch black as this for 5.5%. So that in itself is pretty impressive. Even if I put the light through this, I don't really see a kind of Coca-Cola coloured or chestnut coloured edge to this beer. It is pretty much black as night. If I put my fingers behind the glass, obviously there is no transparency to this beer. You can see there's a solid 2/3 finger that's fading away to be about a half finger of a frothy medium kind of tan head. It's a little bit more beige in the middle, right enough, but I mean, in terms of appearance, there's nothing really surprising about this beer when you consider what style it is. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass and a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of that head there, but I mean, overall it looks pretty nice. Nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. So let's have a look at that aroma then and see how we get on. Oh, that's quite a nice roasty and toasty stout, I have to say. It almost smells quite coffee-like, and the smoothness that comes out of this one, I wouldn't be surprised if they've added a little bit of coffee bean into this one. That's pretty nice, I have to say. I mean, one of the things you can always do with stouts, there's a German malt that's called Carafa, and it was developed by the Weirmann company in Bamberg, and it gives you an almost coffee-like aroma, but it is a bit more kind of bread crusty, and that's one of the things I've always wondered with a lot of breweries. You can actually, if you have stouts that use that malt and porters and things like that, you can tell the difference, because the thing with coffee beans, when they add coffee beans into the brew, it just really smells a lot smoother, whereas the Carafa malt that will give you a lot of the same aromas, it just smells that little bit almost drier and more like a black malt, to be honest with you. So I do wonder if they've added some coffee beans into this, because the smoothness that you get out of this stout on the coffee side of things is really nice. It's got a very, the coffee I think that they've used in this one, if they have, I really suspect that they do. It has a quite aromatic character to it. It's got a little bit of an earthiness underneath, but it's also quite it really is very smooth and aromatic. That's the main thing that strikes me about it. As I've said to you before, I don't drink coffee, but when you add coffee beans into stout, it's a really lovely adjunct to add into the beer. And coffee it's all about what height above sea level it's grown. The higher you grow it above sea level, they call it massal, meters above sea level. The higher that you grow it, the more like aromatic and fruity and stuff it's going to be. It's a really interesting thing. It's almost crafted the same way that like hops and things are these days. But yeah, it's the coffee notes in this one are really nice. Underneath that you can get a little bit of brown bread. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of carafa malt in there as well. It's got a nice kind of dark German brown bready quality to it, a little bit of a kind of toasty bread crust as well. Maybe a little hint of brown sugar, some toasty caramel notes in there as well. And you also get just a little bit of, I don't think there's much chocolate in this, but you might be forgiven for thinking that there is a little bit in there. There's definitely some woody and nutty undertones to this beer as well. I would say mainly nutty though in this case. The woody notes are a little bit more kind of subtle in my mind, but that sort of coffee smoothness that comes out of this beer really kind of takes over the aroma in my mind. They didn't say anything about actually putting coffee beans in this one on the website as far as I could see, but I suspect that there is coffee in this one. You can't get that level of smoothness out of a beer, I think, without adding coffee beans into it, because like I say, carafa malt, which will give you a lot of the same things, it just smells a bit drier, but I'm sure we'll figure that out in the flavour. On the hoppy side of things then, there's a nice little bit of earthiness to this one, definitely some kind of grassy and floral notes in there as well, and you've also got some really nice red fruity qualities. I'd be curious to know what hops they've used in this. Could it be Bramling's Cross from England, which is popular in barley wines and stuff? It gives you some really nice red fruits. It could also be Northern Brewer from Germany, which is popular in the Doppelbox, or even Williamette from America, which gives you those lovely kind of berry notes. But on the hoppy side of things, it's it's quite, there's a bit of earthiness there, some nice floral notes as well. It's a little bit grassy. I would say that all of the green side of the hops, all the kind of elements you can get from that are quite well balanced in this one. It's not really leaning any one way. The earthiness and the floral qualities are quite well balanced. But on the fruity side of things, there's a little bit of a kind of figgy note to this one, but it's quite juicy as well. It's maybe even a little bit raisiny, but you do get a little bit of a blackcurrant and blackberry type note out of this beer as well. So yeah, this one does actually smell quite nice. There's a lot more complexity to that than I thought, and I mean the level of complexity that you have in this stout is fairly impressive when you consider that it's only 5.5% alcohol. So yeah, take a bit of time and enjoy that before you taste the beer. But let's get stuck into this one then. This one is the Kuro Stout, coming in at 5.5% ABV from Naramachi Craft Beer in Nara City, Nara Prefecture in Japan. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, kanpai. Oh yeah, this one fits that same mould that the Weizen had. It's quite flavourful, but it's really light and very, very crisp actually. I'm not sure about the malt base in this one. The first impression is that the malt base in this is really quite dry. I think what I was saying about the coffee and the aroma might not hold up for the taste. I think this is mainly about the malts. It's definitely, I'm pretty sure there's carafa malt in this. Let's just say that now from the flavour, yeah. But as a stout, and as a light stout, a lower alcohol stout, I think that's pretty nice again. And as I say, this is a style you don't find too often from the Jibiru breweries in Japan, but they've done a nice job of that actually. I think that's a fairly solid low alcohol stout in my mind. So yeah, let's try and break this down a little bit then. So straight away with this beer, you can feel a little bit of that kind of smooth, bready quality there. That blankets the middle of the tongue, and it's definitely a sort of German type smoothness. I'm pretty sure there's German malt in this beer. It's very distinctive for its smoothness, as I've told you many times on the channel. But as you go further into the aftertaste, the middle of your palate really dries out and it starts to get a little bit more like a kind of black malty quality. And if you go to the front corners of your palate and move in, you will pick up a little bit of woodiness. The nutty flavours that are aromas rather that I was picking up, I don't find that they come across into the flavour all that much. I think it's mainly woody rather than anything. So a kind of roasty, toasty, black malt base. Although it smooths out a little bit as well, but you've got the kind of woody notes kind of forming the base there. But towards the back of your palate, this one is really quite dry, I have to say. Yeah, at the back of the palate there, as I say, you get some really roasty, toasty qualities out of this. But as you come further forward, it does smooth out to a degree. You get some nice roasty, toasty dryness there in the front, in the back of the palate rather. And then as you move further forward, and if you go to the very centre of your tongue, there are a few little elements of brown sugar in there, like a kind of toasty caramel or something like that, and it's quite it would be quite a charred toasty caramel, not all that sweet, to be honest with you. And as you move further out from that, you might get just a little bit of a kind of biscuity flavour out of this one as well. But I'm really finding at the very back of the palate there is a good little bit of a roasty black malt dryness in there, which is quite interesting. So yeah, this is quite an interesting beer. I really thought this was going to be a kind of coffee stout, but the thing that gives it away in the flavour is the smoothness isn't quite there. I mean, it does get a bit smoother the further you go into the aftertaste. From the aroma, I would have thought this had a bit of coffee bean added to it. From the flavour, I'm not quite sure, because it does have some smoothness to it, but not quite as much as you would normally get from a coffee stout. Although in fairness, this one is lower in alcohol, so it's not going to feel as big and thick as some of the big coffee imperial stouts that I would normally drink from the likes of Dugas Brewery over in Gothenburg and stuff. So I mean, as a low alcohol stout, I think the flavour of this one and the amount of flavour that it has is really good, and the malt base I think is quite nicely done. The thing that's quirky about this is the dryness that you have at the very back of the palate, but it works for it. It is quite nice in that regard. So yeah, I do like how the flavour in this one goes together, and I find that the more you drink of this, the more it kind of smoothens out. I'm actually at the point with this one, because it does smoothen out the more you drink of it. I'm quite torn on whether they've put coffee beans into this one or not. I'd be very curious to know. But yeah, aroma tells me yes. Initially the flavour told me no, but now the flavour's starting to perhaps tell me yes again. It's a little bit confusing, that, but in terms of how good the flavour is, I think it's pretty nice. On the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate there is a good little bit of earthiness there. The level of earthiness that you get out of this one, I think it's a little bit more... I've got a feeling that it's an American hop that's in this, because the earthiness, it does have a bit of pungency to it, but it's also quite smooth, and you can feel that on the sides of your palate. It just smoothens out as you come further forward along the side of the tongue. There's a little bit of floral aromaticity, on the front corners of the palate, but quite minimal, I think, compared to the earthiness. Then as you go round the front curve of the tongue, it's just that little bit lighter and grassy. Then behind the front curve of the tongue, there's that oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. So for me, the fruity side of this one, it's quite nice and light and juicy. You've got some figgy notes in there, the sort of stronger raisiny notes that I was picking up in the aroma. They don't really come out in the sort of front of the beer, like I was saying. There's not really much of a sharpness to the fruitiness of this. It is more kind of juicy, if you like, and as you go further into the aftertaste, it becomes a little bit more blackcurranty and blackberry-ish in my mind. So I like the way that it juices off. I mean, this beer, it starts off quite smooth, it dries out a little bit, and then you start to get more juicy kind of fruitiness out of it the further that you go into the aftertaste. So I mean, overall, this is a really pretty nice beer, I have to say. I like how everything goes together in this one, and for a 5.5% stout, it's got a pretty impressive level of complexity to it. I wouldn't hesitate to drink that again. I mean, the Weizen was a nice beer, but I think this one is a bit better than the Weizen was. So yeah, just have a taste of that have a taste of this one for yourself and just see what you think. So in terms of the mouthfeel then, I would say this beer, it is quite light in its mouthfeel for a stout. It's at the top end of light-bodied, bottom end of mid-bodied, but as I've told you before, Japanese beer, from the GB breweries especially, it tends to be quite light and crisp, but it has a lot of flavour into it, and this beer really reflects that down to a T, to be honest with you. Carbonation does give you a level of crispness in this one, but not too much. And I would say the mouthfeel overall in this one is quite smooth, but at the same time it's quite wet and crisp, which is a little bit unusual for a stout, but this one pulls it off in my mind. The malt base is mainly quite smooth, but also quite dry. I'd say this is one of the drier stouts that I've come across. There's a little bit of sweetness in the middle of the palate and a little bit of smoothness, as I said. Some nice kind of hoppy bitterness in there. I think we're talking about 50 IBUs from this one, both from the coffee and from the hoppy side of things. And you've also got some nice juicy fruit in there as well. It gets a little bit juicier the further that you go into the aftertaste too. But overall, a really nice stout and quite an impressive level of flavour for one that only has 5.5% alcohol in it. So thumbs up to Naramachi craft beer on this one. This one, there was nothing wrong with the Weizen, don't get me wrong on that, but I think this beer is the next level from the Weizen in my mind. I think they've done a nice job of this. This is a pretty solid low alcohol stout in my mind. I'd say it's probably more of a dry stout rather than anything else if we're talking about sub-style categories and things. But yeah, let's just leave it at that for this one. I think this is a really quite nice beer, and I'm glad that I was able to review this for you here on the channel. So yeah, this one was the Kuro Stout, coming in at 5.5% from Naramachi craft beer in the old town of Nara, Nara City in Nara Prefecture, out to the east of me here in Osaka in Japan. A really interesting little beer, this one, and I recommend that you try this if you get the chance. Hopefully, like I say, I can get out to their restaurant, Mugiya it was called, and do a little kind of out and about video for you. That would be a nice little trip actually. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Naramachi craft beer. I'll definitely return to these guys at some point in the future, most likely with an out and about video. Maybe I can review their pale ale at some point for you too. But it's been awesome to review this beer and the Weizen as well, and I will catch you guys very, very soon. Until the next time, slanja just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slanja, skål, kampai, make sure you check out Naramachi beer, and do let me know your own thoughts on this in the comment section below. Cheers, kampai.